Now, no matter how fast a pit stop is, whether they're changing 2 tires or 4 tires, if the gas man does not get his job done back here at the back of the car, it doesn't matter. You're going to have a complete disaster with that pit stop, as we have seen along the way by some teams. So, Chad, let's take a look at some of the equipment that goes into fuel in the car. Let's start with the fuel dump can.
Well, obviously, this is what everybody's typically used to seeing. And now the dump cans used to come in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Well, now NASCAR really has a lot of restrictions on the dump cans, just like what they do with the race cars. Basically, the diameter of the neck can only be 2.5 inches in diameter. The length of the neck isn't really restricted by NASCAR, but the amount of fuel that the can holds is restricted. And the way that they measure that is they've got a sight glass right here on the 1.5-inch diameter vent tube. They've got actually a template that the bell has to fit around. Everything has to be within NASCAR's specifications, basically, and it has to get certified. And when it gets certified, it actually gets a little tag on it that says it's NASCAR approved at that point.
Yeah, it's designed to hold 12 gallons of fuel, and of course we notice it's painted red. That's for safety reasons, showing it's fuel in there. If that thing is completely full with 12 gallons of fuel and you empty it, how long will it take to dump that can of fuel in the car?
It's going to be about 6 seconds of time, and that's about what it's going to take. And it's pretty quick if you really think about it. Now, basically, if you look at the race car, the way that you put the fuel into the car, right here is the dry brake. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you this on this little fuel demonstration table that we've got. Here's the dry brake. Well, on the dump can, the fueler picks up the dump can, and this is a dry brake probe. He inserts the probe into the dry brake and pushes. As that pushes, the fuel is actually allowed to come out through the dump can. And if you look right here, as the fuel starts to pass down through this clear hose and it starts to bubble, that's when the fueler knows that the can is just about empty.
It's like an aircraft. It's called a dry coupling system. And boy, what an evolution of fuel in a car. You go back in the day, like in the 60s and 70s, you didn't really have a catch can man. You had a guy that actually took a gas cap off, and then they dumped the fuel in there.
And what a mess it was.
It was that. Now, we have another piece at the back of the car, Chad, that's called the vent tube, and it actually serves a couple of purposes.
Yep, and this is the vent. And the reason that you have to have this is as you are putting the fuel into the dump can, or into the fuel cell, all the air that is inside of there has to escape somewhere. And if you look down inside there, you can see that little plunger that's right there. Well, what you do is you take the catch can right here, and you see how it's got this probe, this little spear right here, to push that plunger in. That allows the air to escape from the backside of the fuel vent. Well, the other thing this does is this actually catches the overflow fuel that is coming out of that once the car is full. So right here's where it is, and we'll show you here once again on our demonstration table. You take the probe, you slide it into the overflow, just like that. The fuel comes up. As the fuel goes into the fuel cell through this clear hose, it fuels up the fuel cell. The fuel comes out through the fuel hose and out here into the dump can. Once the can starts to fill up with fuel, the catch can man will start waving his hand, and that means the car is actually full.
And there's a couple of rules involving the catch can and the catch can man. One, like the dump can, it has to be painted red, signifying fuel. Now, the catch can man can make adjustments like the track bar and the wedge, but you have to always be in contact with the catch can when the car's being fueled.
Yeah, and it wasn't that long ago that I was changing rear tires, right rear tire, and I would come around from the right rear of the car. The catch can man would be standing here. We would actually trade off. I would hold the catch can in the car, and he would come around and turn and hand in the left rear tire. So there's a lot of things that people used to do, but now the catch can man has to stay with the catch can at all times, but he is allowed to make adjustments.
And you know, one of the biggest fears of any crew member, any team, is a fire in the pits. And of course, that comes a lot from fueling sometimes, whether it gets on a hot brake rotor or a hot lug nut. The gas man apparel has come a long way, Chad.
Slide on up here, bud. As you can see, the fuelers now, they have to wear a full SFI-approved fire suit. And you can see he's wearing the impact suit here. They have to have a full-face helmet, SFI-approved once again, the fire retardant shoes, the head sock, and now one of the newest things that they've done is they have to wear this apron. And quite frankly, the apron is real simply just a way to keep the fuel from soaking into the fire suit if it gets on there. Obviously, if the fire suit gets just drenched in fuel and it does catch on fire, it's going to just continue to burn. This helps splash some of that fuel off of them and keeps them a little bit safer.
Now, you know, earlier we talked about Pat Tryson at 2-car just dominating the race at Atlanta, but they were not completely trouble-free. Here's what Pat Tryson had to say about one of their pit stops.
Yeah, we had a little problem fueling on our first stop, so we were just double-checking, make sure there's nothing wrong in there. And we think it was just our catch can. It wasn't either all the way engaged or the dump cans weren't all the way engaged, but we just wanted to make sure since we had time right there. You know, you got catch can men doing adjustments now, so they're reaching over, and sometimes, so we weren't sure whether that was what it was or whether we had a problem inside, so we wanted to just make sure.
And I think the key words, make sure. When you have a car that good, you don't want anything like that to hamper your efforts.
And that's typically what happens when you've got that good race car. And I actually saw Kurt Busch today. I said, man, great job. And he was like, man, I knew after that first turn, it was up to me to mess up the day. So, I mean, that's what you want to do. When you have a car that's that fast, the big thing to do is just make sure you keep your team calm. And if something does happen, you recover from that.